Welcome back to the Keep Going podcast with Vin Kennedy. I'm your host, Vin Kennedy. Today we have a special guest. This is Cory. Cory, you want to do a brief intro?
Man, thanks for having me. I appreciate the time. Glad we were able to make it align on a Wednesday here, midday. Yeah, for those that don't know me, I am the founder of Forever Athlete, co-founder of an app called Get Seek that is coming out here soon in Austin. Grew up a swimmer, was a competitive swimmer my entire life. That was my whole identity for as long as I can remember. And then one day it wasn't because swimming doesn't have a professional stamp or league or anything to compete in. And that was where my life kind of changed and pivoted. And I found myself in some lows of lows and highs of highs and everywhere in between. And that's why I'm so passionate now about giving back to that athlete community and helping better navigate that transition space, helping better navigate that question of who are you beyond sports. And just really I've been fascinated the past few years diving into identity as a whole and what is this construct of who we are as individuals, as purpose on this world, and where do we go from here?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And we were just talking about it before we click record, and it's so easy to get labeled and put in, like you were saying, like put in these boxes. And I've done it to myself. People do it to me. I do it to others without even realizing sometimes. And if you kind of want to just like pick off right there, so like obviously, yeah, you were identified as a swimmer, and
Yeah.
where did that? Yeah,
Well, I think we got to look at like why we do that, right? You and I and humans in general, we don't have an abundance of time on our side. So labels, boxes, identities are great in one breath because they help us quickly learn what we need to know about other people and help us remember what we need to know about people as well. So they have some use to it, right? And if you don't have identity as a whole, you just kind of feel like you're a drifter going through life trying to figure things out. Nothing seems to stick. You don't feel like yourself. You feel lost. You don't have purpose. So what's interesting, I think, is our society gets so caught up on this notion of purpose. We want to be able to put hybrid athlete or whatever it is these days in our Instagram bio so that people understand who we are and the content that we put out rather than exploring through, okay, here I like to run, I like to lift, I like to do this, I like to do that. This is my lifestyle, this is my thoughts. That's more my approach now for social media, but everyone else tells you you got to niche down. You got to just like hammer home the one niche because, like I said earlier, people want to be able to come across your profile or come across you in real life and be able to quickly know who you are and what you're about. But when we peel it back, right, and we look at identity through this, we go through this evolution of identity. And this is just basic like childhood psychology. When you are first, call it 8 years old, you don't know who you are. You're trying things out. You're trying to grapple with what am I good at? What do I enjoy? And then for most of us, sports is that first thing that we grab onto and we're like, whoa, this is fun. This is exciting and I'm good at it. Or for some of us, it's math. Some of us, it's science. Like that's what's so great about our educational system in that time frame in
right.
particular. Um, and then where it gets tricky is like that's our first iteration of identity. So the first evolution of identity is shifting from who am I? I don't know what I'm doing to you find something and then you start to say, oh, cool, I'm a swimmer. Like swimming is awesome. I feel like me. I'm so confident when I'm swimming. I'm on the pool deck. So I gravitate towards that and I go all in on that one thing. And that's great because it takes you to like the next level and you start to evolve and that's a fantastic space to be in. However, there's a ceiling to it because at some point identities can like when you're in a box, you feel the edge of that box at some point. It's inevitable. So when you feel that edge of the box, then becomes this like aha moment instead of freaking out and saying, okay, I'm feeling boxed in, saying, okay, how can I maybe find a new box and try that on for size and see what happens? And that's where that like final evolution, final stage of identity formation for us as humans really gets to be is exploring how we can start to embrace the fact that we can be multiple things. And we're feeling really boxed in at our job, so to speak. The answer isn't always, I just need to quit that job and change industries. It's why don't we explore another box outside of it? Sometimes the answer is as simple as maybe I'm going to get into running and start exploring running a sub 3 and pushing a half marathon. And then all of a sudden your love for your job comes back, like your relationship gets a little bit healthier. And it's because you've started to diversify your assets and you hadn't just go all in on that one thing. And then when that one thing doesn't work out, you're left looking around like, what do I do?
So, so true. You touched on so many things there that I definitely want to point out. And just one would be like, so going all in allows growth, like you said. So like, yeah, you really do need sometimes something to focus on for growth, but then pivoting from there is also a superpower, right? Where that'll allow even more exponential growth.
Mm,
Um, and then I think even within that, like you mentioned before, like a hybrid athlete. So it's funny because I think that was created to kind of unlock identity, right? Because then you're not fit into one box of fitness. But then even within that, people fit themselves in, this is, I'm an athlete and that's it. I'm just a hybrid athlete. So I think it's really unique. And it's funny because I feel like more people I talk to are kind of not even hating on that term, but kind of getting away from it just because it even now has like its own kind of box that you're put into as well. And something personally, and I'm sure I know you're in the mental space as well, as far as just like this isn't just growth that you're seeking physically. Like I'm mentally trying to get better as well.
mm,
And I've now put challenges that my first one's probably not going to be till 2024, and I've only told like a handful of people, but I want to go live with monks for like a month. And it's challenging yourself in these other ways outside of just like I could run marathons until my feet bleed, but like what am I? And I know that I'm learning from myself mentally, but where else can I tap into that?
100%. And that's what I realized for a while. I didn't want to do any crazy physical challenges post swimming career because they were easy for me. You know what I mean? Like it sounds so twisted to say, but it's like the first marathon I went from not running more than a mile within 6 weeks running a full marathon by myself on like unassisted, just went out and had like a backpack on. And it was brutal. It sucked. It absolutely sucked. And people that were following me were like, oh my God, that's so impressive. In my head, I was like, I mean, yeah, but like the body of work that I put in for 18 years as a swimmer is what's allowed me to do this.
Right.
It's not as hard as it might look for you. It's for me, it's more of, yo, like sitting in therapy is really fucking hard. And
Right.
that's like way more painful revisiting past trauma and having those discussions than it is to go, like if you told me after this I needed to go run 20 miles, I'd be like, all right, cool. I would actually look forward to that more so. Maybe not now. Now I've learned to embrace that, like I need to go there and unpack certain things with trusted individuals in that space. But yeah, I mean, if you asked me 5, 6 years ago, hey, what would you rather do? I'd say, oh, I'd rather crush myself in a swim workout, a run workout, a gym workout, doesn't matter what, than talk about how am I right now, my mental state.
No, absolutely. And it kind of goes back to like even what you said, like, because it's doable, right? So it's like you kind of need a goal that's a reach that isn't like so obvious that you could accomplish it, but at the same time, it's challenging you to change.
Yeah, I mean, that's where the fun happens, right? Like they say growth happens what, like 1%, 4% outside of your comfort zone, whatever the made up statistic is.
It's true.
When I look at that, like I had a coach growing up that I loved. He would always tell this apple story of basically our training was the ladder that we would climb. We would climb up this apple or this ladder to grab the apple from the apple tree. And the apple represented our goal, the thing that we were capable of doing. And he said, no matter how hard you train, the ladder is going to fall short. It's going to be a little bit short to get you to where you want to go. It's going to require you to jump, to trust that you can trust in the training. And obviously, the more training you do, the closer you get. But inevitably, you still have to perform on game day, right? You still have to get up and go. And that was always his message. He was like, only so much training will get you there. You still have like the other aspect is performing. And that's how I always now look at setting goals and aspirations for myself and creating a vision for myself. It has to be just outside of my current skill level, because that's what's going to keep me motivated to actually train, do the work. If I know in my back pocket that I could run, let's call it a sub 3 or 250 marathon, I'm actually not going to be very motivated to then go out and train every day. But if I have doubts that I could run a 245, I'm going to have to show up every day to do everything I can to like go make that happen. And that's not a vision or a dream or goal of mine right now. Who knows? Maybe it will be. But yeah, when we look at that, there's this notion of when we're looking at performance, the simplest way to break it down is we have a graph, and on one side you have the challenge, and that's the challenge at hand. Say, for example, a 3 hour marathon. And then on the other axis, you have your skill level, your current level of skill. Peak performance happens on this like slanted, sloped line, where the more skilled you are, the harder the challenge has to be for you to get excited and for you to perform. If you're over skilled and the challenge isn't high enough, you get apathetic, you procrastinate, you push things off. If you're under skilled and the challenge is too great, you get apathetic and you just start to say, well, like I got nothing to lose. There's no way I'm going to beat this person. That's why, like, if you and I got put up against Kipchoge in a marathon, we'd be like, what's the point of racing this guy?
Right.
We're not going to win. So we wouldn't even try.
True. It's so, so true. And it kind of actually goes back to exactly what you posted today on Instagram, right? Where it's like that you kind of, most people need proof, right? Where it's scary to take the jump without the proof. So like, I pose a question to you then, like, how do you almost, what kind of self-talk do you use to make that jump anyway, when you don't have that safety net below you?
Yeah, it's differentiating between like what do you need to actually take that step, to take that action. You don't need proof. Truthfully, we don't. We think we do, especially if we're not feeling confident. A lot of us think that confidence comes from past proof, and like I've seen a powerful exercise, but it doesn't always serve you. Is like if you write out your past story, and David Goggins refers to it as like your mental cookie jar. So if you dump out all these impressive things that you've done in your life, you can pull them out and you can say, oh, okay, I've been this badass here. I've done this. I've done that. Okay, now I got the confidence pep talk that I need. Now I can go take that action, take that step into what is the unknown. However, if you want new results, if you want like truly limitless possibility, you need to be willing to forgo the need for proof in taking that step. And instead, you need to prove yourself. The BPN campaign right now, right? Like prove yourself right.
Yeah.
You get to create proof. There's a difference between creating your own proof and relying on past proof. Proof is only rooted in the past. And if you want to become a new version of yourself and make a change in your life, you need to release that need for proof and lean into that trusting the unknown. And that looks different for everyone, right? Some people, their conception of trust is, I need to feel safe. Well, then the question becomes, well, where do you feel safe? Safe is a feeling that we want to be feeling right now in this present moment. And if you can tap into like becoming grounded and tap into that present moment of like, all right, cool, my heart's still like beating, my breath is still working, I'm relatively healthy, there's no immediate need, like rent isn't due like until next week, so I'm not like feeling that in this exact moment. I'm fine. I can trust that. So we look to instead develop trust in the present moment, and then you can take really powerful aligned action from there into true limitless possibility, rather than you just get boxed in by proof in your past story.
Yeah, no, it's so true. And then obviously that ties in with labeling, and it's a whole cascade. And something that kind of leads into that I wanted to definitely talk to you about is just like drinking and alcohol as a whole, right? So like at one point I was in the same boat as you. I was kind of like the party guy where it's like that was a label of mine, that was safe. Like going out getting hammered on like a Friday, Saturday night somehow, which it's not, somehow seems safe, right? Because that was the norm. How did you kind of step outside that? And I know a lot of people are kind of on this like either no drinking or limiting it, just kind of realizing what it does to you.
Yeah, man. I mean, it really started for me. And I was about to say, you're a mortgage loan officer, right? Full
Yeah.
time. That was my first job post grad.
Okay.
That was like my stab at the dark of trying to answer like who am I and what's success.
Yeah.
And it was a really, I mean, that was a really tough, and I don't know if it was, I don't think it was necessarily the industry for me. Well, I can definitively say it wasn't the industry for me. I didn't love it. But the company that I was at, the culture there was very much like go, like work hard, play hard. Um, you got rewarded by hard work, by open bars at Ravens games and this, that, and another thing. And it was interesting because I realized I was on this repeat cycle of didn't really like my job, and then I would like drink on the weekend to forget about it, and then get the Sunday scaries. But I told myself I was doing all the right things. I was lifting every day before work. I was meal prepping my meals. Like I was dialed, quote unquote, I thought dialed in, doing the right
Right.
things. It wasn't until I realized like I put on about 50 pounds in 6 months. I liked to say at the time that I was just bulking and that like
Right.
it was good weight. And then I went to run a mile and my knees felt like they were going to explode. And I was just like, all right, something needs to change. What needs to change? And when I took inventory, I was like, all right, this job, this culture, it just isn't prime for me. I don't thrive in this. I need to take a step back. And I started to explore. And that was like the first in a series of really starting to just make decisions based off of what I needed versus what I thought people around me needed from me. Meaning that I started to find success for myself. I stopped looking at, okay, if I made $100,000 at 22 years old, then I'm now successful. You know what I mean? That doesn't mean anything to me, at least, if my knees feel like they're going to explode when I go to run. I want to be able to enjoy movement and have a healthy relationship with my body. And so then over time, I started to explore, okay, what does this look like? And I had relapses in the sense of falling back into that same pattern of, all right, I'm disliking work, I'm disliking what I'm doing Monday through Friday. So therefore, what am I going to do? I'm going to numb that pain and forget about it on the weekend. Um, and then I noticed I started becoming very functional at being able to do that. Like I was able to be really successful. I was running a team of 45 people at my last job, full time, and I would drink until 3 a.m. on like a Thursday night at a bar special, get 2 hours of sleep, come in and teach a boot camp class for 25 people and crush the boot camp class. And then one day, thankfully, like March 2020 happened. It forced me to hit pause. And when I looked at myself in the mirror, I was just like, what are you doing, dude? Like, why are you telling these people to push harder in their workout? And here you are living a completely unhealthy lifestyle. It's not sustainable. This isn't what I would want 5 years from now. And so if I had to try to justify it, I started to create this rule of like, if I have to justify it, I need to let it go. Like you don't, anything that truly serves you, you don't sit there and justify like, well, like I want to keep dating my girlfriend because her company has like good health insurance and like potentially like I could be on that health insurance. It's like if I had to
Right.
justify keeping her around based off of that reason, I shouldn't be with her in the first place. And that started just slowly over 2020, me really dialing back how much I was drinking. I I tried to like keep that old version of myself, that past version of myself alive. I remember it's funny, I just bought a Groupon for the first time in probably 3 years. And when I was going on it, I saw recent Groupon purchases. The last thing that I had purchased there was a case of 20 bottles of wine. This is like March 2020. Purchased 20 bottles of wine at like a crazy rate. And I remember the roommate that I had at the time, him and I being like, this is the best deal. We got to get all this wine or it'll knock down. What else are we going to do?
Right.
And something clicked for me, man, during that time frame where we got 20 bottles of wine. My roommate drank probably 18 of them, and I had maybe had two over the span of, let's call it 3-4 months. And I really started to realize when the option of like not going out to the bar and spending time with people that way was off the table. And I started to have more like Zoom conversations with people like yourself all across the country. I saw how limited I was, in my opinion, of just doing the same thing. And I started to see more of what the possibilities lied on the other side of, well, what is it that I actually want? What am I actually craving? It wasn't the false, and again, this is just my experience. It wasn't the false sense of closeness that I was getting with the people that I was spending time with. And I started to shift how I actually spent time with people. It wasn't that I like ditched the friend group that I had. Instead, I looked at how can I actually spend quality time with them, not quantity time. And coming into 2021, I had an opportunity. I had just made the decision that I was going to leave DC. I was going to move to LA, and I was going to move in with two of my best friends out there. And as I was coming into that decision, weeks leading up, I started to be like, all right, well, I got to say bye to some people, spend quality time with them. And I came to an odds where New Year's Eve, I had an option. The friend group that I had that was part of the like, let's go out and just drink our face off every single weekend. They were hosting a New Year's Eve party where the lingo was basically come black out and forget the worst year of our lives, and ring in the new year the right way. I was like, that like messaging just doesn't resonate. It doesn't
Right.
feel true to me right now. So I don't know. Like I want to go there. I feel obligated to go there because I'm moving away and I won't see them as frequently. And then I had, on the other hand, an invite to two of my really good close friends that I had made friendships with that year. They lived up in Baltimore at the time, which was like an hour drive from where I was living. Invited me to do just a potluck like dinner party to bring in the new year. And I said that, like when I really sat back and thought about it, I was like, the dinner party sounds and excites me way more than the like going to a house party and being kind of uncomfortable around drinking. And like, I didn't want to start the new year feeling like ass.
Right.
So what I
Yeah.
did was I went to the New Year's party for an hour. I helped set up. And then I said, hey, hate to do this to you guys, but like I gotta go. I gotta go to Baltimore, see some friends. When I told them I was heading to the potluck, heading up to Baltimore, one, they were like, why are you gonna drive an hour? Like your friends are here. And I was like,
Right.
well, I can have multiple friends. Like
Right.
that's part of it. And I was like, look, the reason I came over early and spent time helping you set up and grabbing the pizza and getting whatever was I wanted to spend quality time with you. And I feel like I got that. And I'm leaving here in 2 weeks. And like I'll see you before that for sure. But I want to go now spend quality time with some other friends of mine that mean a lot to me as well. And when I put it that way, they were like, oh, okay. Yeah, that makes sense. I was like, I wasn't going to get any closer with that friend group by staying through the night. And that was kind of that pivotal moment. I went to the potluck, had a old fashioned, just one, and then I was like, I wonder what my life would look like if I just cut this thing out for 30 days, 60 days, and just reassess. And here we are about a little over 2 years later, and like still haven't had a drink since then. And it's just this constant, for me, I don't know if it's a forever thing. I was very hesitant to create sober content, to be honest, because I think sobriety is often looked at, obviously, through that black and white lens of like, you either are sober or you're not.
Right.
And then there's like that messy middle of, well, who's to say moderation is right? And it's like, for me, moderation didn't exist because of my old relationship. But now I'm just kind of in the space of like, I would love to explore moderation, truthfully. However, I just haven't found a space, a event or whatever it may be, where I feel more called to like have that drink than to not. And so I wouldn't say I'm like sitting around twiddling my thumbs waiting for that space to come up, but I'm just constantly checking in with myself when I find myself in those situations. It's like, oh, am I going to be in a new culture, a new city, and there's like a staple that I quote unquote should try, and I feel like I actually want to try it, then yeah, maybe I'll have a sip of it and trust myself now that I can have just that sip. It won't turn into a fifth of whatever it was. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Absolutely. Do you feel almost like resistance now towards like drinking almost? Like, do you feel like almost a weird sense of a label as being like sober?
Yeah. I mean, I felt the same. It's funny what social can do to your like perception of that too, right? Like I felt the same with relationship. Like I was single for 5 years. And then when you are putting yourself out there online and you start to realize like, okay, I have really good hooks. Like I started to realize what hooks brought me a lot of views and a lot of following. It was anything having to do with being single for that long and anything having to do with sobriety. I knew I could say if I start a video saying like I stopped drinking at 25, or I've been sober, my last drink was 200 or 400, 600, like whatever the number is days ago, people are they're hooked. They're gonna watch it all the way through. So there's a little bit of that fear of, well, if I lean into that, like I lose that hook. And then I'm like, but what's the point of that? Like, what's the point of, am I creating content for eyeballs on me? Like, that's a pretty selfish, like egotistical way to create content. It's always, I want to share my experience for others to create an experience within themselves. And so if that's the case, it's like, I got into a relationship a few months ago and I'm thrilled about it. If I was stuck to the old story of, well, now I lose that hook that I knew was really good for me in my content, then I never would be able to experience this beautiful relationship that I'm in right now. And I think the same is true around sobriety. It's like, if I'm so attached now to the identity of sobriety, like, and I make that my whole personality, then yeah, I have a ton to lose if I go back. But I don't think it's going back. I think it's writing a new chapter in my own story. So yeah, it's just kind of like dealing with that internally of, oh, am I going to be a fraud if I say I was sober? And then my mind goes to, well, maybe that's a great hook right there. Like, I was sober for 2 years and 3 months, and then I had a drink. And
Yep.
people are going to be really interested about that, like what that journey is like, right? And I want to show people that just new experience in general is possible. Like, that's the whole reason I create content, because that's what I'm doing in my day-to-day life, is I'm just trying to create new experience for myself and improve my life in that process, bring others along the way.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And ton to unpack there, but like exactly your growth mindset and your content reflects that. So I feel like even if you were to, have a couple drinks now in moderation, that's you exploring that. And again, I, I know I don't know you very well, but I could just tell even from you opening up from that, like your goal isn't the views and it isn't the likes, it's who you could impact. So I feel like
Mm.
you being authentic and kind of just even if you do have a drink and then opening up about it, how it made you feel, your thoughts on it, or like just moderation as a whole, I feel like would encapsulate kind of like a new audience. But it's so true. And it's so, again, it goes back to the labeling and like we do it to ourselves where it's like, I'm in the same boat where I haven't drank in probably over a year, but like I said, I was a party guy. And then even that I label myself as like, I can't be moderation, which isn't true because I've done it. I've done
Mm.
it even right before like I really stopped drinking. I was drinking in moderation. I didn't enjoy it how I used to enjoy the other form of drinking, which is, the blacking out, getting hammered and, being like the life of the party, but that doesn't serve me. And that's what this goes back to is this is self-growth and this is us exploring ourselves. And we kind of also use social media as an outlet to do so.
Mm.
Um, Listen, now, do I have the secrets to blow up? Absolutely not on social media, but I'm staying true to what I do, what I enjoy, and I wouldn't say I'm selfishly posting content, but as much as it is for me, it's for who I can impact as well. It's really not for I would like a bigger reach, absolutely, but that's not the end game, and I feel like you're in the same boat.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, the responsibility that comes with that larger reach is something that
Right.
I don't know if I want. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, I don't want every decision that I make to be scrutinized by a million people. I want to be able to have the freedom and the flexibility and quite frankly, like anonymity and anonymous. I can't even say the word. The anonymous like element of it, of
Right.
being able to just like fuck up, like make a
Yeah.
mistake and not
It's true.
have that pressure in a lot of ways. And I think a lot of athletes resonate with that, right? Like, one of my idols growing up, so to speak, because I was a swimmer and he was a few years older than me and from the same area, was Michael Phelps. And unfortunately, like, we got to watch him grow up under this like microscope of that it comes with fame and with people knowing who he is, and like the responsibility, so to speak, that he never signed up for. The dude just happened to be really fast at what he did and win some
Right.
medals. um and then he had to publicly make mistakes like the DUIs, the getting caught smoking and this, that, and another thing. And then more recently coming out talking about depression and the impacts on his mental health as a result of it. And I feel for the dude because he didn't ask for that. He didn't ask for that microscope and that lens. And there'll be people in the sports media that'll be like, well, yeah, but you got to know better. And John Morant is like a more, I guess, prevalent, like recent
Yeah.
example of this. It's like in some breath, yes, like Josh should know better. Like there is that, what are you doing going on IG Live at a strip club? Like, why would you do that? Like, that's not the place to do it
Never a good idea. Yeah.
at. But he did, and he messed up, and he's made a mistake. And so therefore now it's like, all right, well, what are the people around him doing to like really rally behind him and help uplift him? Like I look at Michael was so successful in the longevity of his career because the people he kept around him were able to lift him up and like help him through those mistakes. So a little bit off topic, but I'm like, that's what I like don't want to go through is like, I don't want to learn from my mistakes publicly in
Right.
real time. And I don't think anyone should have to, but that's just the nature of celebrity and fame and large audience following. But there's something that's not the norm. Like it's okay to go through these life lessons and growth and then share on your own terms.
Obviously, we talked about a ton, but I think one thing is what's like advice you would give to someone either that wants to stop drinking or just kind of wants to make like overall changes in their life?
Such a good question. I think really it starts with looking at like the why and why you want to go ahead and make that change. And then asking yourself to like, who do you need to be quote unquote successful? And what does success look like there? Does it have to be black and white? Like I'm cutting this completely out. Like for me, that's what it meant in my experience. Like I needed to cut it all the way out so that I could become quote unquote successful. And I just went into this mindset of like, this isn't going to be me for the rest of my life, but it's going to be me for the next 30 days, the next 60 days. I'm going to commit to that and then just reevaluate each day afterwards. So it doesn't necessarily need to be like the decision like starts today and this is me for the rest of my life. Rather, what identity do I need to kind of embrace and lean into today to just make a shift and a change to get to where I want to go. And then once I'm there, let's reevaluate again. I think that makes it a way more manageable instead of looking at it as this like, I'm 20, like if you're in your 20s and you're trying to make a decision for the rest of your life, good luck. Our generation, we're not very great at that, right? Like, we're not seeing ourselves staying in the same career path the entirety of our working life. So why do we expect anything else when it comes to like habit change? So instead of approaching it that way, approaching it the same way as you would a new job, like I'm going to mess around with this for a year, see what happens, and then reevaluate, make a jump that way. I would say that's the best piece of advice there as you're looking to make changes, really take a step back, ask why you're doing it, and then reevaluate in a few months' time or a few days' time and see, is this something you still want to do?
Yeah, I mean, it's so funny because this has been a conversation that has been coming up. I went to Florida last weekend, and this has just been a conversation that keeps coming up, and you nailed it on the head with like define success for yourself, right?
Mm,
Where I feel like we look at social media, we look at money, we look at certain status or likes or even followers, and then again, you can get away from that. You can look at cars and material things, and we just assume that's success, right? Like we put certain things on a pedestal when we don't even do the internal work to actually find out what we want. And
yeah.
and I've been having this conversation and like it's something that I really I go deep in thought with this really often. And like I've realized that I only need like a couple of things. Like I really enjoy my physical challenges. I really enjoy my time with my family. I don't need, I used to think like you need to be an entrepreneur, you need to make millions, you need to, be Gary Vee, you need to be on a stage. And I like the deeper I get into this self work, I've realized like that's not even what I want. That's just the idea of, you get into this kind of space and that's what you think it is. And it's just so interesting. And I think a lot of people, you're right, could just totally benefit from doing the deep introspective work of just what is my personal success and just go after that. And nothing else really matters.
Yeah. Yeah. I think we'd all save ourselves. I know I can speak for myself the most, obviously. I would have benefited so much if I just paused at various points in my life and said, like, is this actually what I want? Like, why
Yeah.
is it that I'm doing X, Y, and Z? Why is it that I'm spending thousands of dollars on like a blanket? Like told this story
It's true.
recently on a episode of my podcast where I was like, yeah, man, years ago, like fresh out of school, had what I thought was like a high paying job. And I was like, how do I prove to other people that I'm making it? Oh, I'm gonna buy a rabbit fur throw blanket and matching throw pillows with $2,000+ of money that like I realistically like didn't have. But it was
Right.
like, oh, if I'm gonna do this, like it portrays status. And if we can just pause, like if I just paused and ask myself, like, is this what I actually want? No. How do I convey the same thing? How do I convey to like the people around me that, yeah, this is actually who I am and what I'm doing? It's oftentimes not through the external flashy thing or whatever it may be.
It's so true. And it's funny because and a lot of it, a lot of just success as a whole gets kind of like materialized through money, right? And
Mm,
that's another thing where it's like everybody thinks like you hit that pinnacle of like, oh, if I make six figures, I'm good. And like again, I'm not to get too deep into finance, but like I've made money that I didn't think I would make. And you don't really need it. Like once you hit a certain threshold, again, a family comes into play, kids, and things get more expensive, totally. But as a single person, and again, it matters where you live and all of that, but there's really not that much of a difference between, just say 50K and 80K. Like your life isn't, and I'm pretty sure Jordan Peterson speaks about this, where like I think it's like the cap's like under $1 million, like between like 75K to like almost a million. Like realistically, depending on how much you spend and what you really enjoy, your life isn't going to change that much because of money.
mm, yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think money's just such an interesting one.
It really
Um,
is.
but yeah, that's I think we always, especially around that, I dove deeper around this on a recent solo one on Forever Athlete Radio, but with it pertains to that and a lot of honestly things that we are chasing after, so to speak, and seeking is often a result of, you just kind of said it, it's like we keep chasing after it, thinking that once we have it, we will have like X. But if we can start to flip the script and instead look at it from, well, what would it look like if right now I had abundance? If I had that money, how would I be? And then how would I act? And then you'll start to have it more so. And when you start to play game or play life through that lens and play that game, that's where it gets really fun because you start to realize like you're not chasing after the wrong things anymore. Instead, confidence, happiness, money, like all these things are all things that energetically you can feel right now in this moment. And then it's when you tap into that truly, this like most peaceful version of yourself, when you then are taking decisive action from that place, things tend to work out a little bit better for you and more in alignment rather than kind of like haphazardly operating from this place of scarcity of I don't have it, so therefore I need to go get it. And then each time you go get it, it's like you have your hands on it and then it like disappears or it's
Right.
spent before you even have it. It's a big shift, but that's yeah, I mean, I could talk about that all day.
Yeah, no, but it's so true, and you even it's something there that I like to think about too. Is like it is a game, right? Like I mean, technically, life is a game. Like I know it gets deep and it can get down a rabbit hole, but it's all made up. Like this is all made up. Like you could build what you want out of it. The odds of you even being alive are insane. So why do we, yeah, like put these giant, aspirations on such material goals or just money goals when really like time is the most time is the most valuable asset. It really is.
Yeah. Yeah, I think something truly powerful starts to happen when you like release from this idea of you remember those JG Wentworth money commercials way back
Yeah.
when? It's like it's my money and I need it now. When
Yeah.
you can start to actually release from this concept of like it's your money, it's my money, and just look at it as like it's just money, whether it's coming in or coming out, it's just neutral. It is what it is. It's money, it's exchange of energy. Um, some powerful stuff gets to happen. Like I'll tell a quick story of even just yesterday, my dad called me up and he was like, Cory, like I got some pretty bad news. Like I fell victim to like a PayPal scam, and like we share a joint bank account because he helped me set that up like back when I was 16 for my first job. And he was like, it looks like they were able to get into that account and drain it. I don't know if you noticed. I was like, you know what? Like I actually didn't notice, but
Right.
okay, cool. Deep breath, like a few thousand of dollars were in there and now they're not. What next? And if I had kind of taken that lens of, holy shit, they stole my money, like I would have
Yeah.
let that emotionally affect me for a longer period of time. But instead it was just like, all right, cool. It's not there. Ease, like align with my most peaceful self now. Great. What are we gonna do? All right, we'll call Capital One. We'll call the bank up. We'll get things sorted out. And sure enough, within literally 5 minutes, shout out to like their customer service team and everything was sorted back out. The money was transferred to a different account of mine. Passwords were reset, like, and everything hypothetically is good for now. But even just that little shift where it was like a few years ago, I would have been freaking out that thousands of dollars are missing right before quote unquote bills are due and all of that at the end of the month, you know?
And it's so funny because isn't the growth just funny? Like when you catch yourself where like, oh, I would have freaked, this would have ruined my week. Like I love catching those moments of like, now you have the initial reaction, but then you control the response. And that's so
Yeah.
powerful. And it's more than just the money at that point, because now you could just handle life as a whole. And yeah, that's a great little like a great story to kind of put it into truth there.
Yeah, man. I think that's I mean, that's the fun part. It's tough to share that as like a transformation photo on Instagram. It'd be
Right.
like,
It's
this is
true.
before and this is after. Um, but I'll I mean, having gone through physical transformations as much as mental ones, I'll take the mental ones every single time because that to me is like true freedom there. Again, like having the six pack and having the ripped body isn't like the source of happiness. You are the source of happiness. So you need to align with that first, and then you'll have that other stuff. Same with the money.
Yeah.
Yeah, man.
And things get easier too when you do align with the mental, everything kind of I wouldn't even say just perfectly works in your favor, but tends to work in your favor and just align. Um,
Yeah, I was about to say it's important to note that like aligning with your most peaceful self doesn't mean things are going to be comfortable. That doesn't mean that it's going to be easy and that everything is butterfly and rainbows from that moment onwards.
true.
You're constantly coming up against resistance. We all are, because that's the dynamic nature of just life in this present moment. But oftentimes, honestly, aligning with the present moment and just grounding yourself is the best thing that we can do because then we stop telling ourselves or we catch ourselves and stop telling ourselves this crazy anxiety ridden story, right? That you're going to go down this rabbit hole of if I don't have that thousands of dollars in my bank account, then I don't know, rent's due tomorrow. So like I don't know how I'm gonna pay that rent. And then it's like, whoa, rent's due tomorrow. This is like the now. This is today. Let me ground in the right now. As of right now, truly, like I'm safe. It's not like I have a gun pointed to my head saying, pay me rent right now. I'm gonna be okay. I'm gonna figure it out. And I can then make so much more calm decisions from a place of peace and from a place of like, all right, we're gonna figure this stuff out. Heart rate is still raised. Like it's still not a fun thing to sit on the phone with your bank for on wait for a few minutes. Thankfully, it was only a few minutes, but it's better than the alternative of like calling the bank and be like, oh my God, my dad's like, he made this dumb error. He clicked this thing on this email. It's your fault. Like, give me back my money. It's, it
It's so
never
true.
solves anything.
No, absolutely not. And I was just talking to some buddies actually. It's just funny. This just hit me. We were talking about like I'm sure you've seen these guys that do like the free climbing with like no harness, no anything. And
Mm,
I feel like that's kind of life, right? Where like there is so much stress and pressure and anxiety around you. But if you're not calm and you tense up your body, like they say that these guys that do this free climbing are just like low heart rates, just like really calm people because you have to be, because that's how you have to be to navigate problems and adversity. And I think that's life, right? Like when you do tense up, things could go wrong. When you stay a little easier and make smarter strategic decisions, you're in a better place.
Yeah, I mean that's what I loved about swimming, and it was one of the hardest things to teach people around swimming is like there's this constant counterbalance that's happening. Even like as you watch an Olympian swim freestyle, for example, they make it look so effortlessly and smooth, but under the water, they're like insanely moving so much, they're moving so much water. They're so powerful under the water. And then there's like this relaxing, this ease in their shoulders. They come up and catch the water again to like give it another go. And it's this constant, really beautiful dance of muscles are flexing, muscles are relaxing and catching a breath here, there. The whole goal is again like keeping the heart rate low, keeping it in that really that window of tolerance of what can your body do in this space. It's no different than marathon running, right? Like you don't want to go out the gate. I always tell myself, like as I'm running, like where are my shoulders at? Can I relax the shoulders, lengthen the breath? Like if my shoulders in my ears, I know I can't hold this pace, this tempo for that long. So how do I lengthen my stride, drop the shoulders and ease in? It's through that breath. But yeah, we find ourselves, it's a little bit harder, I think, on the day to day in life to catch yourself being like, okay, where are my shoulders as I'm working or as I'm having this conversation? What's going on with my heart rate as I'm talking to my spouse and we're arguing, or I'm at work and I'm trying to close a deal and I'm getting frustrated. How do I find that balance of like, okay, no, I need to push to get this thing to the finish line, but I don't need to bulldoze. Like finding that finesse
True.
is the true the true goal
Yeah.
that we're all after.
So, so true, man. And the last question I ask everybody is what keeps you going?
I think right now it's my curiosity. Like there's just so many things that I'm still young. Like I'll be 28 next month and or not next month, next week. And I'm so curious about so many things right now, honestly. So it's the curiosity that gets me out of bed. It's the curiosity that keeps me going and has me just excited about just potential right now, but also living in this present moment, whether that be through reading books, through doing podcasts, through creating content, letting that curiosity drive me.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And it's self-growth is never ending and it really is a fun journey. And you mentioned I turn 28 next week as well.
Let's
When's your
go.
birthday?
April 6th, man. When are you?
April 2nd.
There
So
we
coming
go.
up.
Happy early
Yeah.
birthday.
Thank you, brother. You too. But yeah, man, honestly, I really appreciate your time. I really appreciate your insight and I love what you're doing on your page. Where can people find you?
Yeah, I'm first off, man, thank you for having me. This was a blast.
Cool.
And I really appreciate the platform. People can find me on Instagram at Cory Camp, CoryCamp, or at Get Seek. That's the new venture that we are rolling out here in Austin. Hopefully by the end of April, we'll have a private beta for people to test. That's a whole app that really geared towards helping people make more genuine connections in their local communities through experiences. So
Awesome,
that's where
man.
people can connect and stay in touch.
Thank you, man. Honestly, really appreciate the time. Hope you have a great day.
Thank you. You too.